I'm Bookwoman,
Bookman.
and we're back for another take trying to get this right. Susan Elia McNeil has written a fabulous series. I can't say enough good things about the Maggie Hope series. This is the last Maggie Hope series in the series called The Last Hope. So it's really good, and it's 1944, and Coco Chanel actually joins Maggie Hope in solving what happens in 1944. It's a page turner. Please tell her to write more books. And Jacqueline Winspear says this is her last Maisie Dobbs book. So The Comfort of Ghost it's good. She ties up a lot of loose ends. She may bring her back, but I think that people will be satisfied about what happens in 1944, 1945 in the London area. And for a little more fun, I love some good sort of beach reads, and I love Helen Simonson. The Hazelbourne Ladies Motorcycle and Flying Club takes place in 1919. And you know, there were certain things women couldn't do, but what they could do was get a motorcycle and run errands and help people and even work in the battlefields. So what happens when the war is over to with these women? This is a great book. If you like Major Pettigrew's Last Stand, one of her previous books, you're going to love this. And speaking of swan songs, Eileen Hildebrand says this is her last in the Nantucket series that she writes every summer. I've read them all. This is Swan Song, and she brings in a lot of the characters, mostly a police chief and some nouveau rich people in Nantucket. Somebody dies, or do they? And it's a lot of fun with the haves, the have-nots, and the new to Nantucket. I'll turn it over to you.
I didn't know there was ever a time when women couldn't do everything, as proved by the author here, Betsy Phillips. I'm only doing one book, hers, called Dynamite Nashville, and I'm only doing the one book because it's my book of the year. This is the most important book about the history of Nashville and Tennessee in the South directly that I've read in at least 30 years. And I've been waiting 5 years to get the finished product from Betsy here, and the wait was worth it. This is all about J. Edgar Hoover, ultimately, and the so-called reasonable white people who didn't throw bombs, but they approved of others setting off bombs and killing people in the civil rights movement. They approved of the lynchings through their silence and through their failure to investigate it. J. Edgar Hoover, I was raised as a kid, got all that lost cause trash when I was in the 4th and 5th grade and didn't know better. And all through school, J. Edgar Hoover was held up as a hero. Actually, Mr. Hoover, who served 37 years as head of the FBI, was far from it. He denied the existence of the mafia right up through his death, and therefore instructed the FBI not to enforce the laws against the mafia. He claimed that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was a communist, and therefore no one should pay attention to him or follow any of his teachings in leadership. Hoover did everything he could to turn the clock back to the 1800s and failed, but it was a close call. Nashville went through a series of bombings motivated by racism and race discrimination in the 1950s and 1960s. Those bombings, as Betsy Phillips illustrates, were organized and carried out by a cabal of ringleaders from the Ku Klux Klan who migrated to the White Citizens Council, who migrated to the League of the South and other innocuous sounding names so they could continue to get white business support in Nashville and throughout the South to finance their bombing and terrorist activities, because they knew J. Edgar Hoover was not going to investigate them and not going to arrest them. Betsy Phillips documents time after time how files never got opened by the FBI as a result of lynchings and bombings and other terrorist activities, or files that had been opened got closed mysteriously for no obvious reason. Nobody was getting arrested, etc. She documents, as others have from time to time, but she's very organized about it. how the informers who were supplying the FBI at the time of the bombings with the actual names of the people who made the bombs, the actual names of the people who carried the bombings out, and the FBI was not arresting any of them. Why not? Because the FBI wanted to maintain its contacts in the Ku Klux Klan and similar organizations. They weren't getting information from their informers like the police do today, where they arrest me for committing a crime and offer me a reduced sentence on the crime if I inform against my co-conspirators. No, they were giving a free pass to these racist terrorists in the South in the 1950s and 60s and 70s, not opening files on them, closing the files that should have been under active investigation, and she documents it every step of the way. You need to read this book.
And even better, invite Betsy to come and speak to your organization. She's phenomenal.
She's a heck of a speaker.
Yes, she is. Check us out at bookmanbookwoman.com and keep reading.